All right, good afternoon, everyone that's on the line with us today. This is our final installment for Financial Literacy Month, our Desktop Diner series, and today we will be covering money myths. We know there's a lot of stories and things we hear about money, and we want to either bust or confirm some of the things that you may hear in reading articles and talking with friends. And today, this presentation is brought to you by Nevada Money Mentors. A couple of housekeeping items before we get going. Your lines are all muted currently, your videos are off, but we do encourage you to use the chat box. We have some questions that we'll ask along the way. And to make it a little bit more interactive, feel free to chime in through the chat. We will also open it up at the end for questions. If for some reason we lose you through internet issues, we'll jump back right away into this Zoom meeting and reopen the call. So just hang out and our money mentors who are on the line will entertain you with some information. And before we get started, just wanted to introduce my money mentors who are on the call with us today. We have Dee, Dahlia, and Devin, and they will each take a piece of a couple myths and bust them up for you. So before we get started, wanted to make sure you knew who we are. Nevada Money Mentors is a free resource on campus. We provide financial coaching to students who want to meet one-on-one with a money mentor and discuss your own personal finances. We cover things like budgeting, building credit, savings plans. And during this time, with the COVID crisis and pandemic affecting all of us, we want you to know that we're here for you. And if you're interested in scheduling an appointment, we'll give you the link on the next slide. But when we all get back on campus, we also host some fun workshops throughout the year, tabling events you can pop by and say hello to us, and you may even see us in some of your classes. So we like to cover different topics that are of interest to students. If you have any ideas, we would love to hear from you on future topic ideas. More on financial coaching. As I mentioned, you would meet one-on-one with a coach. We are meeting currently with students virtually, so you would meet with a coach via Zoom. It's been very comfortable to chat with you through the Zoom meetings. They're free, everything's confidential. And we like to say non-judgmental, because when you come and you're opening up to us about money that you have or don't have maybe right now, we want to walk you through the best way to build an action plan to help you achieve your financial goals. And we really hold you accountable to what needs to be done in reaching those goals for you financially. So we encourage you, when you're ready, set up an appointment. You can do that at any time through unr.edu Nevada Money Mentors. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our fantastic Dee, who's going to start busting up some myths for us. So Dee, take it away.
Hello guys, thanks for coming today. I am Dee, the personal finance content creator, and I'm gonna go ahead and start you guys off with myth number 1. So our first myth is cheaper is better. Next slide, please. So cheaper is better. That might be a good thing because it allows you to still have fun while you're on a budget. You can go out to dinner with friends and not worry about, going over your budget or overspending. Happy hour at restaurants can save you a lot of money. Believe me, I know. And secondly, you can save for bigger expenses. Let's say you want to go on a trip to Hawaii, or maybe you want to go to Coachella. By spending less money, you have more left over to put into savings. And so you can, with that money that you have in savings, you can save up to buy these things, or even if you want to buy a new car. And last but not least, impulse buying really helps you to, cheaper is better. Like, it really helps you to avoid impulse buying, because normally if something's too expensive, then you're going to really sit there and deliberate whether or not it's worth the amount of money that they're asking you to pay. And sometimes if it's too expensive, then you're just like, okay, well, I can find this cheaper somewhere else, or I don't need this. And so it prevents you from buying expensive things that you don't need. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys to tell me in the chat box whether you think that this myth, cheaper is better, is true or false, or if you think it's plausible that it could be both. Okay. Plausible? Okay. That's a good answer. Can be both. Okay, so we have two people saying that it could be both. Anyone else? Confirmed. Okay. We have someone who is very certain that it could be cheaper is better. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and reveal what the answer is. Busted. So, actually, cheaper is better is not the best option. Just because when you're buying things that are cheaper over time, you know, it may be cheaper. Like, let's say you go to the mall and you buy a shirt, and it's like $2.99 at the store, and you know it gets the job done. But if you went to another store, you might have to pay like say $20 for that shirt. So it's a huge difference in price points. But the shirt that's $2.99, you can only wear that like 2 or 3 times before there's a hole in it or it starts tearing or the thread starts coming out, because since it's a cheap shirt, then that means that it was most likely cheaply made. So you might end up buying a ton of those $2.99 shirts, when in reality, had you just bought the $20 shirt, it would have been cheaper than just buying a bunch of $2.99 shirts. So sometimes it is better to spend more money on something just so you can save in the long run. So one time, this makes me think about the time that I went to a discounted store, and it wasn't like a thrift store. It was just like a discounted store. Like they had like really cheap things, and you know all of their items were cheaply made. And I was like, oh my gosh, like everything's like $2-3. Like this is the life. I went in, I bought my items and everything, and I think it was the first time I wore one of the shirts, the strap started coming off. And so I was like, well, this was a waste of money. Like, yeah, it was only $2, but I would have preferred to have to wear the you know, the shirt a little bit more before it started to tear up, you know? Dahlia says she's been there before. Yeah. And so it's disappointing when you buy something that's cheap and you're like, oh, you know, I'm gonna get to wear it a couple of times, and the first time you put it on, all of a sudden the strap's falling off. So that's a pretty good example of when buying something more expensive is just better in the long run, because you can wear it a ton of times before it tears up. So now we're going to move on to myth number 2. So our second myth is parents know best. Next slide, please. So, you know, your parents, you may feel as though your parents know best because they have more financial experience than you. They are most likely significantly older than you, so they have been paying bills, managing finances. If they own a home, then they know they know a lot about the ins and outs of finances and taking out loans and whatnot than you may. So they're very much more financially experienced than you are. And normally they have well-paying jobs with a pension and benefits. So they know all about, you know, when you're applying to jobs, make sure you look for something with benefits, certain benefits. They know about, you know, saving for retirement when they're getting older and whatnot. And last but not least, you trust their judgment because they know more about you than anyone else. They are your parents, you know. They birthed you, they've raised you your entire life. They know all about you. And so because of this, you guys have a bond of trust, and that's why you trust the advice that they give you. Next slide. So I want you guys again to tell me in the chat box whether you think that this myth is true. Do you think that your parents know best when it comes to finances, about your life and whatnot? Do you think that it's false? Or do you think that it could be a little bit of both? Do you think that it's plausible? Okay, so Sai says not always, Dahlia says false, Kyra says false. So we have a lot of people saying false. We got one kind of a maybe, they don't always know, but okay. So I see we're leaning towards the no side. So let's go ahead and see what the answer is. Busted. So that's true. Parents don't always know best when it comes to your finances. And it's because the financial economy has changed. We can now use a variety of apps to manage our money. 20 years ago, people were still balancing checkbooks, and they were still going to financial advisors and whatnot to talk about budgets. And people still do that today, of course, when it comes to bigger purchases. But now it's more so a thing that someone's likely to have a budgeting app on their phone. So that way they know whether they're overspending and whatnot. And the cost of housing and living expenses has significantly increased in the last 20 years. I mean, even just thinking about the Reno area, like, you talk to people who lived there 10 years ago, 12 years ago, they tell you how much the cost of living has gone up, and how much more expensive it is to live in Reno. And so that could be something that's very different that your parents may not understand, because maybe when they bought their house, or when they were, in college and had an apartment, they could afford to do all these things and pay their rent and do this and do that and the other because things were cheaper. Um, and interest rates on savings accounts are no longer in the double digits. Like, I didn't even know that it used to be a thing for savings accounts to have such high interest rates. But now it's very hard to find a decent interest rate on a savings account. So that's also something that would have been different when your parents were your age. Um, Secondly, lifestyles and jobs have changed. Maybe back in the 70s, if you have older parents, or 80s, or um, you may have been able to get a decent job that would help you pay all your bills, feed your family, and everything, have a nice house, live a pretty, the American dream like lifestyle without a degree. But nowadays, it's a lot harder and much more competitive to get a job that pays a decent wage if you don't have a college degree. And also, 20 years ago, attending college was a lot less expensive. As college students, we all know how expensive it is just to pay for classes, pay for housing, pay for other extra unexpected expenses. If you're living away from home, then you have to pay for groceries. So the cost of attendance as far as college goes was a lot less expensive 20 years ago. Um, and last but not least, ultimately, you know how to manage your money best. Um, Parents shouldn't have access to things like your bank accounts and investments. Um, and they may not, and maybe they shouldn't be able to set spending limits or view your account balances or manage your, like I said before, investments. Just to encourage your own financial independence. I know for some students this isn't a possibility because their parents do pay their tuition. They may send them a monthly allowance. So maybe that is why they have an overview of your account balances, or they may set spending limits for you. But maybe you could just have a conversation with them, or, just something to consider, that it's important for you to learn how to manage your money on your own. But that being said, my last point is it's okay to ask for advice. Always ask for advice. There's nothing wrong with asking your parents for advice when it comes to finances, but ultimately you should be making those decisions for yourself. You can ask your parents, but you can also ask other sources as well. And then ultimately you make the decision upon what you want to do with your finances. Okay, so now I'm going to pass it over to Dahlia.
Alrighty, thanks, Dee. You made some great points with those myths. So again, I'm Dahlia. I'm a peer mentor, so I'm a student just like you guys. And today we're going to look at the next few myths. So myth number 3 is shop early for the best deals. Next slide, please. So this myth is applicable especially around the holiday season or in the summer for semi-annual sales. During the holidays, Black Friday happens and people flock towards those sales to get holiday shopping or Christmas shopping done early. I think people like to shop early because they think they're getting really good discounts. Also, people sometimes think that the earlier they purchase their gifts equals the more thoughtful the present is. And also, some people really just want to get their shopping done early so that they have more time for other things like spending time with their family or cooking holiday meals, although it's not always the best thing for your wallet to be shopping early. Next slide. Sometimes last minute shopping can actually be better. If you think about it, retailers don't want to be keeping holiday merchandise in their stores after the holidays. So they may be willing to give even bigger discounts the longer that you wait. Also, sometimes buying holiday gifts after the holidays will give you great presents to use for other things. For example, you can stock up on presents in January and use these presents for things throughout the year, like for birthdays or for graduations in the following months. So next slide. Everyone go ahead and type in the chat whether you think this is busted, confirmed, or plausible. Okay, we got a true from Amy. We got a plausible, confirmed. Oh my goodness, we got all sorts of answers. So let's see what myth number 3 is. Myth number 3 is actually busted. So it's not always better to shop earlier, but it really just depends on the kind of things that you're shopping for, right? Okay, next slide. Myth number 4 is debt is bad. Next slide. So first of all, debt is any money that you owe or borrow. There are lots of different types of debt, from credit cards to student loans to car notes. The list goes on and on. Debt definitely can be bad because of a few reasons. Debt encourages you to spend more than you can afford, especially with debt like credit cards. For me, I know it feels like I have more money than I really do when I see that I have $1,000 credit card limit, but in reality, I actually don't have that $1,000, so you can't, or like that's just really dangerous if you're not careful, right? Also, interest rates can be difficult to keep up with. In the long run, you might actually spend more money on something because of high interest payments. For example, you might have store credit for something like a TV, and if you make minimum payments on this, you might actually be paying hundreds of extra dollars in interest. Whereas if you just saved up money for a TV every month from your paychecks, it would not cost you any extra. Lastly, debt can be damaging to your credit score. Your credit score partially depends on the amount of debt that you have. So if you have too much debt, this can actually negatively impact your credit score. Next slide. However, there is bad debt and there's good debt. Good debt is debt that increases your net worth. So think of things like mortgages or possibly even student loans. Bad debt does not increase your net worth and is unfortunately most types of debt. If you're able to responsibly take on debt and always make payments on time, this can actually improve your credit score and open the door to many opportunities. Having a good credit score can give you better rates on things like car loans and can help you buy a home in the future. It really is important to match your debt to your goals, meaning just take on what you're capable of repaying and always make payments on time. This can actually be super beneficial to you. So next slide, please. Time for you guys to put your predictions in the chat. So is this myth busted, confirmed, plausible? Go ahead and take a guess. Okay, Devin says plausible with a smiley face. Dee says false. Amy says busted. Okay, we got every single answer on the board. Plausible. Okay, so those of you that said plausible are correct. If you want to go ahead and click Amy. Wonderful. So this myth, the myth debt is bad is actually plausible because if you're irresponsible with debt, it can be very bad, right? But if you're able to be responsible and live within your means, debt can actually be a really good thing. So thanks guys for listening to my portion. I want to go ahead and introduce Devin, who will be going over the next 2 myths.
Thank you, Dahlia. So yes, we are on to myth number 5, which is leave extra cash in your checkings. Okay, let's get into the details. So this myth is really prevalent in today's society when it comes to flaunting your own wealth. It really is a way of showing people that you're able to buy whatever you want immediately. So breaking it down a little bit more, let's look at some of the benefits of keeping your money in a checking account and the benefits of holding it into different accounts. So the benefits of checking accounts really breaks down to liquidity, meaning you're able to immediately withdraw money from this account and do whatever you want with it. And it really helps with, flexing on others, just being able to do what you want with your money. If you show the checking account, they can see it flat out. But the benefits of holding your money in savings or different investments can also be very appealing. So keeping money outside of the checking can lock up your money so you don't feel the urge to spend on unnecessary items, and at the same time gives your money a chance to grow in ways that checking does not provide. So let's just see whether you can confirm, bust, or it could be plausible. So please give your guesses if you can. So we have a busted, confirm, false, false, busted. Oh, that's a lot of answers. So we could open it up now. So yes, you could confirm that this myth is busted. You really don't get a chance. Basically, the myth is ultimately busted because checking pros cannot compare to the savings and investments, especially now that the Federal Reserve has waived withdrawal limits from savings, making them more liquid than ever. So you get the benefits of a savings account with the benefits of a checking practically. So now let's look at the next myth and our final myth. Debit is not better than credit. And I'm sure this one might turn a couple heads, right? Because some people are terrified of credit cards and some people love using them, maybe a little too much. So let's take a look at some of the details. So the truth is, debit cards have very minimal amounts of benefits when it compared to credit cards. So credit cards give their users theft protection. Some give good reward points. And when used correctly, they can increase your credit score and act as an interest-free month loan. But remember, credit cards give you a great power. So that comes with great responsibility, of course. So you have to be very wise when you're using your credit cards. And let's just go to the next slide, and then we could share a little story about my use of credit cards. So please put in your guesses on what you think the myth is, confirmed, busted, or plausible. So we have a confirmed, plausible, and okay, plausible, and a busted. Okay, we could go ahead and share this. So it actually is confirmed. Debit is not better than credit. And this just comes in multiple forms. Like in all accounts, a credit card does give you better benefits than a debit card really can. And I realized this personally a while back when I got my credit card. And if you're able to control your spending in a way that you're not spending out of your means, then you have full reins to do whatever you want with this credit card. I found myself using my debit card for no real reason because it didn't give me any theft protection. It didn't give me any points. And basically, it was just a non-factor in relation to using a credit card. So now we could just bring it back to Amy just to close this out.
Awesome. Thanks, Devin. Gosh, I had some of those right, some of those wrong, I think. And I do encourage you to look at your own personal financial situation as you're looking at these and what goals do you have and how do you want to use credit versus debit or build credit and cheaper versus better and the things that we discussed today. So thank you so much for your participation in the chat box. We wanted to end this off by reminding you to just stay connected to us. We are pretty active through social media channels. We will announce upcoming events. We post tips and tools and resources and love to get you thinking about money as you're sort of going through your feeds. We want to feed you with some money knowledge. And we have had some fun over this past month. As I mentioned, it was Financial Literacy Month and we did some takeovers and we would appreciate the extra following, or if you just want to follow us for your own sake, we'll give you some great tools. With that, just a reminder that you can visit our website anytime. schedule those appointments with us for financial coaching. We are running our financial coaching sessions through the summer, so we are available. Again, we're doing them virtually through Zoom, but you can schedule with us and we'll get you on the calendar right away. We typically meet with students about 3 to 4 times throughout a couple of months so that we can follow your financial path with you and get you on track to achieving those goals. So with that, we'll leave it open for just a moment. If you have any questions that you would like to discuss through the chat box, we'll be happy to go over that. If not, we hope that you had a great lunch at your desk with us today and that you will join us for another event in the future.